Tweet that clip. That's what we decided to call the repo. And then it just went from there. What have we spent our time doing? That is a good question. Before I tell you that, I'm going to tell you what full fact does right now for live fact checking. You saw the tool, you get the transcripts in real time, you get a match, you get the fact check with the summary, and then there's this little innocuous button that says tweet, which if you press takes you to this, which just gives you the link to the fact check. And what my fact checkers then do is write the actual summary in that situation. They will make sure the link is correct, that it's all up to date, and then they will put out the hashtag for the thing that they are live fact checking. This one did particularly well. I'm proud of that one. And that was the last PMQs. So that was on September 12th last week. The thing that this isn't telling you is that this is in response to Jeremy Corbyn saying something. And you have none of that context in this tweet. We're just expecting people to have just been watching PMQs, and there's plenty of people who do. And so it's kind of more for an audience that is right there at the time and getting the live fact checking. So we wondered, is it possible to add the, that's a really awful sound.
We'll just add
to add the context. So could we all of a sudden have the video and then tweet it out in real time along with the show. So we got a video of question time, privacy questions, and you do the thing. Do you want to talk about the thing?
Yeah, so it was similar to, I've seen some other projects about tracking kind of sentences to video source. So when I got these through, it has a kind of start and an end time. There was some discussion around where's the most appropriate place to start tracking from. There's some work to do there to figure out, does this cover enough context? But essentially from those times I can place the person in the video. And we have some future things that we didn't get to kind of enable tracking. But the idea is that you can see before you make this tweet the kind of context, and then that will produce what comes next.
Okay. So now you know that you've got an in and out time, you know that it relates to this fact check, and then it hands over all of that information to James.
On the spot.
Yeah, I mean, once you've got the start time and the duration, and for how long the quote's going to be, we just wrote a little module which uses FFmpeg and chop it up, and we'll basically tweet that little video. So rather than just having a link, you've got the video there, you can directly listen to them saying it, and it sort of just embellishes the tweet. Yeah.
Great. So this is what it looks like now. So here's the before and after, and I will actually show you the video in a second. But the text is the same, the link is the same, there's no hashtag, but that's okay, we'll fix that problem later. And now it actually takes you, it actually has the video in it as well. So if we put the audio back in, we can see it in all of its glory, and I really hope we captured the right segment, because I'm not sure. Oh.
Universal Credit report found that universal credit is creating hardship, forcing people to use food banks, and could actually end up costing the system even more. Does the Prime Minister dispute the National Audit Office findings?
So all of a sudden, that was great. We have an appreciation for the fact that they're talking about food bank use increasing, which it confirms, and that it's linked to universal credit, and that the National Audit Office said that. So Jeremy Corbyn was pretty correct there. And so fact-checking is sometimes about saying that people are correct, not just that they're wrong. So I hope that's a better tweet in general, and I think that would have done a lot better had we put that out. Yay. Improvements. Make it actually work. So we did manage to do each individual bit. but we didn't get it working end to end. That's okay, we'll fix that later. We didn't have the ability to actually add in custom text because we hadn't figured it out end to end just yet. So I like dumped the text on you, and you kind of put it in and cut it up. It's fine. Eventually we'll need some custom controls for like exactly the clip, because we have the in and out time of that claim doesn't actually mean that that's the most useful bit. You might want to add 5 seconds before or 5 seconds after, depending on the context. Somehow we need to get the video. And then somebody mentioned earlier that it might be actually worth burning the closed captions onto the video at some point, so for people who don't actually want to listen can actually just see it. We need to configure it to the full fact account, and somehow this is going to make full fact more profitable in the long run. Does anybody else have any more improvements or things that they would like to add? No? Not at all?
So the video one's interesting. So at the moment, the transcript which you saw on the left-hand side of the interface is actually scraping the BBC's subtitles. It's not actually an ASR transcript. And for PMQs, there's a real-time one that's generated from the stenographers, but then there's a cleaned-up version which is published a number of hours later. So there are some delays involved in the pipeline. Then we had a discussion about some other programs which you look at from a full fact perspective. So one of those is the Andy Marsh Show, Sunday Politics, and there are 2 other shows as well. I've worked on years and years and years ago doing transcripts for a program called On the Record, which we'll probably remember. But those were, when I showed the data, your eyes lit up.
Yeah, I was so excited.
Because
I had the names of all the people.
Yeah, so one of the things that we have in those is in effect a validated transcript of record from the BBC's perspective about what was said by certain people in those programs. So Thatcher said, so Heseltine said, for example. So that's because it's a sort of program. But so from the perspective of facts of what people have said, there could be possibilities of kind of more wider collaboration between the BBC if those kinds of documents, if you like, are available for people like the Andy Marsh Show. And whether it's the BBC as part of our public service remit, we should extend what we do to make more of that kind of data open in a more unified API-ish type fashion. Rob's looking at me going, no idea.
Please no.
But you know, whether in the back of this there are some things that we should be considering doing as a broadcaster, which perhaps we have done in the past, but we should really like to get. But lots and lots of potential for this. Things like the sub-clipping things, we can make really quite fast. At the moment, the video, there was a discussion that we talked about very briefly about the copyright of the video, of course, because this is coming from BBC Parliament channel. So there's all sorts of hoops that might need to be sorted out. Maybe in terms of acquisition of subtitles, at the moment you're scraping an HTML endpoint. Maybe that's something that the BBC or other broadcasters should look more about creating, I don't know, WebSocket streams or that kind of thing to bring delivery of that kind of content to a much more modern endpoint to allow third-party exploitation of sort of broadcast content, but in an IP world, which at the moment is quite a difficult barrier between those two things. So should be doing better technical standards to enable downstream uses like this. And then all the things that could go from that, from sentiment analysis and all the cognitive analysis.
Cool. One note on like the stack and I guess what we got so far. Like, so there's like a front end that was like modified on the existing full fact thing, and then the clipping and the tweeting is a module that we already published, and it's all in the docs and stuff. So if you have like a use case where you need to like tweet out a clip, it also does the trimming, as James said. So that's something that is ready for use. And we kind of mocked out like a microservice express thing that could like take a request and then do the clipping and do the posting. It's more like a proof of concept at this point.
It does work. The module itself is doing clipping and tweeting works. We just wanted to make it an API, consuming that module from Ken, and we just didn't
Yeah, but there's like a repo for that if you want to look at what that would look like as well. Cool.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm quite curious, maybe there's someone who worked in as a producer or editorial for one of the BBC TV programs in it, but whether if it struck me when you were talking about whether it could roll out to wider programs of the BBC, is say you had an opinion show. If you were going to a show to give your opinion, but it were forever searchable and like recorded somewhere, do you think it may risk like people not turning up for those shows or using because they don't want to give opinion that in the future may be different?
I have a short answer and then can see what everyone else thinks. It already is, in the sense that Internet Archive is already archiving every TV, not every, but like TV channels, including BBC and stuff. It might not be as widely known, but it's already happening in that sense that everything is, yeah, backwards searchable.
I think when it's politicians, I don't really care. I mean, they've got a responsibility and they've taken on that responsibility. And when it's campaigners that are going out on shows and trying to push forward a message and that people have an agenda that they're trying to push, I think accountability is really important. I think there's a grey area when it's celebrities who have opinions. I don't really feel strongly about that. But I don't think it should potentially, like, this kind of accountability function should exist for everything. Like, I don't want to like find people's private conversations on WhatsApp and go, you're wrong. But actually, when it's about accountability of public figures, I think that's really important.
I was going to say, something that you do, given what we said, yes, but you know, if we're going to do big shows, there's vox pops, there's people who've just been stopped in the street, you know, so you're absolutely right, there are some issues, and we have had that come up, you know, with the whole right to be forgotten. People put comments on stories online, and they want them not to be there anymore, so the BBC won't take them down, but you know, is something that someone wrote 20 years ago in a moment of stupidity, you know, in a web comments page, is that something that they should be held against them? Discuss.
One of the things that we actually had a hard time with was most of the time on BBC Question Time, not most, but some of the time, the worst bits of information come from the audience who ask the questions, and they're like, did you know that blah blah blah, what do you think about that? And actually it's like contains like really awful like misuse of a stat. We still fact check that because it went out on a political TV show and lots of people have then spoken about it, but if that person got in touch with us, then we would like strip details that make it known that it was them, for example. I mean, we don't really have those details anyway, but we would say like audience member on Question Time.
I think just the one example I think is the fact that a recent example would be that when people speak about Diane Abbott, they would always refer to like mistakes, and there maybe it's in a way kind of unfair. So you could just search through this and say mistakes that Diane Abbott's made, and someone could read them out on a news program.
Yep.
And then there's different layers to that, whether there's like a prejudice effect and this kind of stuff. So
yeah, so it's like the reason why we haven't done this before is exactly because of that. And actually, we purposely, when starting Fullback, decided we were dealing with claims and not people. So that's why that hasn't been built, and that's why we didn't in that tweet say that we're dealing with Jeremy Corbyn, because we didn't want it to be like weaponized by the other side. And I think that's one of the questions that we're battling with as Fullback right now. We've done a lot of this, and it's gotten us like quite far. We have millions of readers, it's going well. But frankly, there comes a point where you have to be like, this is the person who made the claim. And I think we're just now wondering, like, how far down this road do we go? Is it enough to like CC Jeremy Corbyn into this tweet and be like, hey, this was you, by the way? Or, which he knows and everyone else knows who was watching, so it's not like it's hidden information. Or do we like make a big song and dance about it and like actually say, here are all of Jeremy Corbyn's facts, and here are all of Theresa May's facts. I doubt we're going to do that, but I think somewhere in the middle actually serves everybody a little bit better than this on its own right now, which is completely contextless. And I think we're basically going to be spending the next 3 months thinking about exactly that. Hopefully I'll have a good answer for you.
Brilliant and terrifying at the same time.
I know, it's too much power.
So I think that balance is, these are people who are public figures and they've been voted for. So therefore, if we do have too much of a, or we'll take it down because we don't like it, then the trust that's been put in them they should then have the responsibility of making sure that they live up to the level of trust that's been put into them, if you like, by the fact that the population voted for them. So that's the way I would look at it. It's like, you chose to go to that point to start saying those things, and therefore you must remain accountable for all the time that you're in that public position. But that's just me.
But you've absolutely weaponised this if you're dealing with one side that lies continually and doesn't care, and one side that cares enormously when people lie. So, this is automatically a weapon because people will use it against Corbyn and against people on the left, whereas Donald Trump just keeps rolling along talking about the nonsense he feels like doing.
Are you suggesting that all of fact-checking is weaponizing?
I have strong reservations about the way that fact-checking is presented generally.
Okay.
And I think the idea that you are making everybody responsible for it, the idea that you are pulling all this stuff up is a great idea.
Yep.
But it is much more easily weaponized on one side than the other.
Sure, but so let's talk about Parliament specifically.
Yeah.
In Parliament, there is a rule that you correct yourself when you're wrong, and currently nobody is doing that. And actually, when we ask MPs to do that, they don't sometimes. So that is the rule of Parliament that is being ignored. And like people lying is a strong word, people misleading the House is how it's like phrased, is continually ignored. So I think the point I'm making about Parliament specifically in Prime Minister's questions is if somebody misleads, there has to be somebody to ask them to correct the record and uphold that rule, or at least be counting the number of times that people don't uphold it. Otherwise, that kind of starts to degrade that system. And if that system is starting to degrade even further than it currently is, that puts us in a bit of a pickle. So I think that there are some places where you're right, it is weaponizing. And I think, for example, in newspapers and in TV shows especially, it can be a very different rule because there aren't ways to hold people to account in the same way that there is in Parliament. But I think fact-checking in Parliament is incredibly important.
Isn't it immediately clear whether this claim is true or false? Is that because you want people to make up their own minds about it? Or?
Yeah, exactly. So more often than not, we try to give people context and not say this is true or false. That's a choice that we made really early on in fact-checking. We decided not to have ratings because they really ignored a lot of the nuance of the claim. Like if I just told everybody that Jeremy Corbyn was true, that gets even weaponized even further, right? And it's like he's right and Theresa May's wrong. But actually, if I'm just giving people the context, it just changes that dynamic slightly. And I think that also helps people understand how claims go wrong, which I think has almost like an educational aspect to it as well, which is quite important. Like sometimes things are miscalculated and we'll say it's been miscalculated. That's a different form of being wrong. It's not lying, so. Cool.